Quarterback out of Michigan, J.J. McCarthy. Did he make himself some money with his performance down in Indianapolis at the NFL Scouting Combine? We're going to tell you how we feel and more coming up next.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Locked On family? Welcome back to the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, your daily podcast covering your favorite draft prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your boy, Damian Parson, always on the ones and twos. You can find and follow me on X at DP_NFL. I'm a national scout and a senior draft analyst. And thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and everyday shot for being our everydayers. You know, I got to kick this intro to my guy, Mr. LSU himself, Keith Sanchez. You can find and follow him on X at The Talent Code. Can you talk to him, baby?
What's up, Locked On family? Let's get locked in. This is Keith Sanchez, 2019 national champ with those LSU Bengal Tigers, man. Here to bring you championship level content surrounding the NFL draft 24/7, 365. You know, I have to start this show by saying thank you to our everydayers. Shout out to our everydayers. Listen, I know this is going to be an action-packed show. We are wrapping up the combine with the quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers. So make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you comment. And if you're not subscribed to the channel, make sure you subscribe to the channel. DP, you know how we break this thing down, man. We go money makers, the guys that made themselves some money. We go bag fumblers, guys that lost themselves from money with their NFL combine performances. And then we're going to talk about what are the biggest takeaways from such an electric group, right? You talk about quarterbacks, running backs, and wide receivers. What are our biggest takeaways? We're about to get into that. But first, DP, why don't you hit them with our title sponsor?
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 back in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Keith, J.J. McCarthy, the most polarizing player and QB in the 2024 NFL draft class. I say, when you ask the question, did he make him some money, Keith? I think he did, right? Because I think there were some questions about I saw some people question his arm talent, right? Well, he was out there easily throwing at 60 plus yards, and he wanted to showcase that, right? Showcase his arm talent, showcase his just the arm strength that he has. We know he can cut, he has the velocity to zip it into tight windows, work the middle of the field, but outside the numbers, down the field, can you get it down there? Right now, he did not complete a lot of those passes because I think he was just trying to show off his arm, but it's also something that he does need to work on. It's something that I think I put in my scouting report over at the Draft Network that he needs to improve on the deep ball accuracy outside the numbers and just put a little bit more air, a little bit more arc, more of a feathery touch on some of those passes to allow guys to run underneath them when they get a step. But also, I think why he also made himself some money. If you remember when Xavier Worthy ran that 4.21, right? He broke the record from John Ross. One of the first people over there to congratulate him was freaking J.J. McCarthy. That's not even his quarterback. Quinn Ewers was his quarterback from Texas. Quinn Ewers is still at Texas, right? So for J.J. McCarthy, he was out there just being a supportive teammate and just being a good teammate to guys that he probably just met for the first time.
Yeah, a locker room guy, right? You kind of got the vibe that players are going to want to play for him, right? Yeah. And as a young guy, he's going to step in, he's going to work his way through it, but eventually be a leader of the locker room because people are going to gravitate to him. And we've seen, right, that, and we've heard, and it's well documented, right? Some guys, they're the quarterback, they're the quote unquote leader, right? They step into these NFL locker rooms with grown men, with guys that are 10, 15 years older than them, and they rub guys the wrong way. And you see stuff kind of spiral out of control very quickly. I don't foresee that with J.J. McCarthy, just from everything I heard, right? But also paying attention to the NFL combine, not even from a measurement standpoint, right? But just the interactions, right? And what are the interactions and what is the body language that goes on? DP, another moneymaker. I'm going to stay with the quarterbacks. Michael Penix. Michael Penix, he has been a roller coaster, I think, as far as how the draft community likes him, projects him, right? In a sense, it was, early on conversation of QB1, then it was QB2, then it was, this guy ain't going to the third round, right? But I think he's supplanted himself in a good spot after that performance at the combine to be a back into the first round, right? You talk about some of those teams that potentially may want to trade up if if it's going to cost them a second rounder, a third rounder, right? And want to trade up and make sure that they get a quarterback, so that way, they kind of beat everybody to the punch with that type of situation. I even think about a team like a Minnesota Vikings, right? If they want to get back into the first round after they spend their first round pick, that's early in the draft, and then try to get back into the first round to get a Michael Penix Jr. so that way they can make sure that they have a smooth transition to whoever their next quarterback is. That seems like a proper situation, right? Or a team like Atlanta, right? If they don't go quarterback early on, or find the free agent situation, or if they go Kirk Cousins and then they want to go and get a Michael Penix Jr. To sit for a year or something like that under a veteran. So I definitely like and thought that Michael Penix Jr. made him some money. DP, you have any other money makers when you're talking about the quarterback, running back, wide receiver position?
Man, at the running back situation, right? Isaac Gurindo out of Louisville, right? 6'2", 6'3", 220 pounds, 6 foot, 220. But this young man, just came out there and handled business in terms of athletic testing. 41.5-inch vert, 10.9 in the broad. They said 221 pounds, but he ran a 4.33. And I think what it was and how he made himself some money, it's just telling everybody, go back and check my tape. Go watch my tape and see that, hey, when we talk about those big backs, we talked about it in the preview, a guy who needed to show up well was Braylon Allen, right? Listed at 6'2", 245 at Wisconsin. And it's like, man, it was at one point, I remember because I was inside the stadium watching them go through the drills, and I kept getting them two confused because they were built very similar in terms of like Isaac and Braylon. And so I was like looking at him, I'm like, well, I know a team is going to be sitting there like, man, why should I draft Braylon in the second or third round if I can get Isaac in the fourth, right? Where probably coming into the event, he might have been a late day 3 pick, maybe undrafted free agent. I think he helped himself because when you think about teams that want to run the ball, Keith, and be physical, the Baltimore Ravens, right? You think about the New England Patriots. I think Ramondre Stevenson might be coming up on a contract extension soon. And, granted, Bill Belichick's not there anymore, so maybe somebody gets paid now. But, still yet it's never been their MO to cash the handout paychecks like that. So I think he's gonna open the door. Oh, not even just that, but the Raiders, another team with Antonio Pierce as the head coach, bringing Cadillac Williams, right, as the RB coach. You want to continue to be physical. They got Zamir White. If they wanted to bring in just more physicality, that's what Isaac Gurindo would bring, but also the explosiveness. And I think he really helped himself.
Yeah, I'm gonna double down with another running back, and this guy didn't have impressive numbers, but I think he sometimes making money, right, is or solidifying your money, not spending money is making money, right? As long as you're not losing money, you're making money. And I'm going to go with Michigan running back Blake Corum. And the reason was I was impressed with his 40 time. And I think a lot of people, if he ran a 4.62, 4.65, I don't think very many people would have been surprised. And I think some people would have had the feeling of, man, that was kind of what I thought it was going to be, right, as far as his athletic profile. But to come in there and run a 4.53 laser time at the NFL Combine, right, you wonder if this is a guy that can potentially put down a 4.49, right? And we know we've seen high profile prospects, right, year after year, your Jackson Smith and Jigbas, right? So many other guys, like even guys this year, opt out of the running the 40-yard dash because they rather run it at their pro day because they don't necessarily trust their speed, right? I thought it was a bold move by Blake Corum, and I thought it also paid off because he said, I'm not afraid, and I actually have speed. So to put down a 4.53, I thought that was impressive because you even just with his body type, DP, he's what he came in at 5'8", right at 205 pounds, right? This is not a very big guy. And then also he's not a long strider too, where you say, hey, he can open up the gate, but he is a good runner. When you talk about running a football and you can give him the rock. So I think he's elevated himself to where he was for sure going to be a platoon type back, right, where there's going to be multiple guys and he was going to be in a rotation, possibly RB2 in a rotation. I think he's still going to be in a rotation, but he could be that starter in a rotation from here. So I really like that situation. I thought Blake Corum really showed up. But DP, let's keep this thing going and flowing.
I want to give a quick shout out to one of our guys, Ricky Pearsall, Keith.
Yeah.
Ricky Pearsall, out of Florida, 6'1", 189, 441, 157 on the 10-yard split, 42-inch vert, a 10.9 broad.
Smooth It was just a smooth combine. And a lot of guys, I thought that there were highs and lows, right? The guys that ran fast didn't necessarily catch well. The guys that did good in the gauntlet didn't necessarily run well, right? But he had he just went across the board, right? Like it was almost like the offensive lineman, right? It's like as long as nobody's saying your name and mentioning you, you're A-OK, right? And that's really what he did. And I agree with you. I thought the 40 time was impressive. And I always thought that Ricky had the upside to be a legit wide receiver too, and I just think that he just proved that he has the athletic profile to do that. So I'm right there with you, DP, and I'm glad you brought his name. But yeah, let's keep this thing going and flowing, man. We on to bag fumblers, right? Which guys lost themselves a little money just by performing at the combine, showing up, because the athletic testing combined with the film may have their draft stock fall just a little bit. So coming up next, man, we're talking about the guys, the bag fumblers, the guys that lost themselves some money.
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. What's the first thing you do if you had an extra hour in your day? Would you work out? Would you read a book? Would you go for a walk? Would you just call a friend and just talk for an hour? Or would you stay at work and do more work? What you need to do is find the thing that matters to you most. And therapy can help you do that. Therapy can help you find what matters to you the most so you can do more of it. Whether that's, like you said, working out, reading a book, whatever that is, you want to do as much of it as possible. The reason why, because it helps you be the best version of yourself for no one else but yourself, but you. So guys, that's really what it comes down to. So if you've been thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Learn to make time for what makes you happy with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Who fumbled the bag?
Yep.
Keith, I hate to say, because I don't, because I feel he didn't fumble the bag for me. Like I'm still high on him, but I think he's going to hurt himself. I think he hurt himself at the combine. That's Bucky Irvin, Oregon running back, man.
And we did not talk about this before the show. That was my exact guy. But keep going.
Like I came in at 5'9", 192, but the long speed is what everybody's going to harp on, right? 4.55 in the 40, right? And then the jumps, his explosiveness wasn't there. 29.5 inch vert, a 9.7 in the broad. I feel like he was a guy, if you remember how I felt about Kyron Williams, the athletic testing did not do him any favors. Then you get him on the field and he's a baller. I feel like that's what it's going to be for Bucky Irvin, but I think Bucky Irvin may not hear his name called probably until the top of day 3 now, because again, you're the smaller of most of these backs. With all these big body guys, the Braylon Allens, Isaac, like I said, Corum running the 4.53, being as big as he benched like 28 reps. He benched one more rep than Braylon Allen did. Talking about Blake Corum, and for you to be Bucky Irvin to be the smaller of the backs, and you weren't one of the more explosive backs. So to a lot of teams, that testing is going to kind of it's going to be in the back of their mind when you're on the draft board rounds 2 and 3. So I think we might not see Bucky Irvin come off the board until the 4th round.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Like you said, when you combine the size, right, and you want him because you felt like he's an explosive guy, but the explosiveness that's on film didn't necessarily come out in the numbers. He obviously, I still think he's a early day 3 or should be an early day 3 pick for somebody. I just don't know if you'd be able to push that threshold. And I talked about him, potentially having a case because I thought the film was that good to be RB1, right? I think that's probably going to be all the way out the question. I don't think any team is going to be able to rationalize, right, drafting a running back, who's smaller in stature and that ran with a 4.55, at the NFL Combine. But I do believe that his NFL career will still be really good, although the NFL Combine testing was not great. DP, a guy our guy Brentley is going to be kind of angry because we keep picking on the Oregon Ducks a little bit, but I'm going to go with Troy Franklin, man. And here's the reason why is because I thought that while he ran a fast 40, it was just what we talked about earlier, right? I thought when they got to position drills, I thought you seen peaks and valleys, right? I thought you seen some highs and lows sprinkled through there, and you seen some things that he appeared to look comfortable with and some things he didn't. And I'm going to mention another wide receiver too, LSU's Brian Thomas, right? There were some drops mixed in there, and like you said, both of these guys are what they profile as linear vertical guys, right? That stretch the field. But when you're talking about those in breakers coming to working across the middle of the field, consistently working in traffic, those were question marks. I feel like for both of those guys, right? And here they just appear to look a little bit uncomfortable. And I'll say this: it kind of reminded me of the Treylon Burks situation, right? Where when he got to the combine and it was the running routes and it was the doing all the detailed things, it was like, okay, this guy has some development to him, which for especially Brian Thomas, I expected that. But I think that it was on showcase a little bit, right? Now that it just wasn't deep balls, curls, and hitches, and you have to run slants and things like that. So that's the two guys to pick: Oregon, Troy Franklin, and LSU, Brian Thomas. Not that I thought that they necessarily lost money, but I think they did add kind of a little bit of a question mark to their profile from being at the combine.
No, I agree with you, Keith, especially with Troy Franklin. He came in around 176, and to be that weight, right, and not run sub 4.4 or even close to 4.2, like that was kind of concerning to me. I was expecting a much faster time. Then he opted not to run the second time, so I was like, okay, that's fine. So he come in there, and then he wasn't 6'3", he was like barely. I think he was like barely 6'2". Like he was like 6'1" and some change, right on the cusp of 6'2". So I was like, all right, he's still technically 6'1" and above. But I just, and then the routes, like the field work for him was just odd. Like he was slipping, he was falling, he wasn't sharp out of the breaks and cuts. And then I think also remember the gauntlet drill. He's weaving. He's not nowhere near staying on the line. He's not controlled. He's also showcasing what I had a big problem with was his hands. He's not a natural hands catcher. So you're watching the guy fall, like almost fade away backward when the ball's coming to him because he's not natural with his hands to just pluck it out the air, take it from his body. Have his arms away from his frame and everything. So I think it was very up and down for Troy Franklin. I think he definitely hurt himself a little bit.
Yeah, how do you feel about Brian Thomas? When me saying
he had some drops, he had some drops. It felt, and it was, I think, what you talked about, the end breaker stuff. He doesn't run a lot of that on tape. It's a lot of, like you said, hitches. It's a lot of goals. You know what I mean? A lot of takeoffs. And it's like, all right, when you got to plant, turn, and now pan your eyes back to the quarterback and get your hands ready. He's not accustomed to those routes, and I just think he's more raw than people are willing to let on when it comes down to his overall game. Because now, to me, he's a specialist.
Yeah, and I know I agree with that 100%. And maybe we'll have a profile breakdown, right? We break these guys down, but I agree with you 100% on that situation, right? Is that if you draft these guys in the first round, you draft them with a wide receiver room already in place, and they're your deep ball specialists, and then you hope that you have veterans to come in to teach them how to do the rest of the game, right? But I foresee DP if I'm sitting there and I'm just trying to put everything on their plate and make them wide receiver one of my NFL franchise. I wouldn't feel comfortable with the outcome of that, especially early on, right?
No, 100%. And you talk about putting them with, if you got a Stephon Diggs, if you got CeeDee Lamb, like, yes, you throw those guys into that type of offense where they can get the more advantageous matchups and your offensive coordinator can get them in those perfect spots. But if not, and you're drafting them, like if you're the Carolina Panthers, man, I know you're sitting at 33 and not in the first round, but if you take a Brian Thomas Jr., with your first pick, if you take a Troy Franklin, you're just like, you know what? I'm taking this guy to be my number one. I'm looking at you with the side eye, like, did you not learn from last year when you took John Domingo and probably put him in those the big shoes that left by DJ Moore? Because guess what? Those shoes still aren't filled if you're looking at the Carolina Panthers situation. So I think both of those guys, good players, they offer some intriguing things and things you can't teach. But I do 100% feel like their stock could be. I think Brian Thomas still goes round one, Keith. I'm not gonna lie. I think he still goes round one, but I do feel like Troy is gonna fall to that second round, right where I had him actually. So I think that's where he's gonna eventually land overall. But Keith, I got to say, a guy that I was a little, I think he made himself some money at first, and then for me, he kind of lost a little bit. Adnan Mitchell, like I didn't like his field workout. Like it didn't look like the jumps were explosive, the 40 time was great, but then you get on the field drills, and you're just like, what is happening? Like, you know what I mean? Like from the route running to, I know timing is different because you're not used to these quarterbacks, right? You know what I mean? Your quarterback is still at Texas. I get that.
Yep.
But it's like I kind of felt like he should have did what Xavier Worthy did and say, you know what? I hear you, Dion. I'm just gonna go ahead and take my cleats off. You know what I mean?
Right.
I just ran the time that nobody expected me to run. Not Worthy. We knew he was fast, but that when you're Adnan Mitchell, you jump and jump as high and run as fast as he ran. I would have just said, you know what, guys, I am done. I will see y'all in Texas, whether it's March or the beginning of April. See you down in Texas, man. I'm not messing with this no more. I'm not doing anything. I just didn't feel like the route runner, the smoothness I saw on tape. I didn't see that like in Indianapolis when he was going through the drills and everything.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, and I wonder if it was just because he's a tempo type of guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you know how sometimes the NFL combine drills and the coaches tell the guys not to do it, but I think they get so amped up, right? And then sometimes you say like that, you hear them tell them take your time, right? And it's not just the wide receiver drills; it'd be like the O-line drills or the DB drills, and be like, you don't have to backpedal and turn so fast. We're just trying to see the fluidity and the smoothness of it. But I think with AD Mitchell, it was just like fast pace because he's a tempo release guy, right? Like he's one of those diamond release guys, right? They're gonna take the time at the line of scrimmage and get you right. But I think that may have, because like you said, it's on film. Like the guy has the releases, the route running. The question mark we had was the speed, right? We knew you could run routes, we knew you could jump, we knew you could one hand catch. The question mark we had was how fast is this guy? And you knock that box off. So we'll see. And you know, obviously they have pro day, Big 12 pro day. I think they're still doing it in that facet, or it'd be at Texas, right? And we'll be able to see and get another glimpse of that because there'll be another high profile school that I'm more sure it'll be televised. But DP, let's keep this thing going, man. Biggest takeaways. What are we taking away mostly from this quarterback, running back, wide receiver group when it comes to the evaluations, when it comes to the draft projections, when it comes to ranking these guys, right? And where we feel that what role we feel that they will fill immediately in the NFL. So coming up next, man, we're going to talk about what are our biggest takeaways.
Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Right now, new customers get $150 back in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. You can bet on all your favorite NBA players like Cade Cunningham for myself, LeBron James, Steph Curry, Damian Lillard, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo. You can bet on all those NBA players as well as teams like the Denver Nuggets, the Golden State Warriors, the Minnesota Timberwolves, the Boston Celtics, and so much more. You can bet on them with quick bets, live same game parlays, exclusive props, and so much more. Just visit FanDuel.com/locked-on and shoot your shot. Just visit FanDuel.com/locked-on and shoot your shot, because FanDuel is the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Thank y'all for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our everydayers. Biggest takeaway, Keith, my biggest takeaway from the quarterback class is that if you need one, you better go get one now. And I'm talking get one in round one. There's only, like day 2 grades right now. I have Michael Penix as a second rounder. I have both Bo Nix and Spencer Rattler as like high thirds. After the first, and I also gave JJ McCarthy a second round pick. I expect him to go first round, but his grade off of the film was a second round pick to me, right? Boy, you got what? You got of course Caleb, Drake, Jaden, JJ, Penix, Nix, and Rattler. So that's 7 QBs, right? I expect 4 of them to be off the board in like the top 20 picks. There's more teams that have answers or have questions at quarterback to where you're like, man, Denver, if you don't move up, I know there's a lot of talk about the Atlanta Falcons going to get Kirk Cousins. I think that's a terrible idea. I'm gonna be honest with you. I think that's a horrible idea. You about to run this back? Like you gonna run it back with an older quarterback come off an Achilles, man? If you don't move up with the Chargers at 5, Atlanta, and go get you a quarterback, like go get JJ if he's there. You know what I mean? If Jaden slips, the word out of the combine is that New England's not trying to move anymore. Like we're not even like that's not even a thing right now. So it's like, man, if 3 QBs come off the board, now you got to find what guy. And Keith, we all know it. Like you can't just put any of these guys anywhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if you are Denver, if you are Minnesota, those are 2 teams outside of the top 10. With Atlanta sitting at 8, the Raiders at Las Vegas, they're what, 13, 14? Like there's still multiple teams that need to figure out their quarterback situation. And if you don't know what you're going to do, listen, second and third round may be okay for you, maybe. But I'd rather be aggressive and try and go up and get one of these top dogs if the chance is available, if the chance is open up to me.
Yeah, I think it's going to be the same thing, DP, because I think quarterbacks are going to go so early, and then I think teams are going to panic, and then I think that they're going to have to, like we talk. I think the spot is the back in that first, early second, right when you're starting to get to like pick 35, pick 29, pick 35, pick 40, right? Like that's when you can expect potentially that combination of Michael Penix, Spencer Rattler, right? And these guys go off the board. And I think teams are analyzing it too, right? Because a lot of teams that even with the free agent market, we talk about the Russell Wilson, the Kirk Cousins, right? Where they're going to fill a couple gaps, right? As far as quarterback needy teams, but teams are still going to know that is just a temporary solution. And it's both of those guys are not something that you can 1,000% bank on, right? I think both of those guys are capable of still playing good football in the NFL, but you still just don't know, right? Just because of what happened last year, Russell with the Sean Payton debacle, and then Kirk Cousins, torn Achilles. So I think they're going to be quarterbacks. I believe. I think all 5, 6 of those guys that you just named, I expect them to be going within the top 45 picks. I think all of those guys will be out the door. DP, my biggest takeaway, man. I look at these guys and I like the NFL combine. We say, right, the 40 time isn't everything, right? It's not the end all be all when it comes to this evaluation process. We talked about it pre-combine, what to take away. And I told you it was going to be a piece of the evaluation, right? And so relying heavily on the film and coming there, with how I felt about a guy, there were some performances that I felt like you go back to the tape, right? And I'm gonna tweet about this. These are my go back to the tape guys. And Xavier Worthy, Ladd McConkey, Trey Benson, Jalen Wright. That's my back to the tape guys, because I thought it was some really fun conversations when you talk about Xavier Worthy and, the conversation of, obviously, he broke John Ross' record, right? So it's like, but is he John Ross, right? With just another fast guy? Is he Darius Hayward Bay, right? And you want to go back to the film to be able to iron that thing out. In my latest mock draft, DP, I seen that, I think it was Jordan Reed and maybe Lance Zierlein. They put Xavier Worthy number 32 to the Kansas City Chiefs. I think that was awful. Put like big boy ranking too. I don't see the guy who ran the fastest 40 time ever going to slip to 32. I put him at,
not when you can run routes as well.
Right. When you can run routes as well. I put Xavier Worthy to the Philadelphia Eagles. We just went to the mock draft. So I'm going to go back to the tape. Ladd McConkey, because the athletic testing numbers, somebody tweeted that out right during the combine. It was like, hey, this is on par with Garrett Wilson, right? I thought, because it's like a wild take, right? Like, hey, you're just going to say that this is Garrett Wilson, but maybe if he's not Garrett Wilson, right, in that capacity, who is he, right? And I'm glad that he ran a fast 40, so then that way we can throw out the Cooper Kupp conversation and, just stop doing the simple comps. And I want to dive further into it, right? Like, what if this guy is Santana Moss, right? Or something like that with the speed.
Chris Olave a little bit.
Yeah, Chris Olave. We just haven't, and we know at Georgia's offense, we haven't seen him be able to be unlocked, right? And I think everybody expected him to, maybe he'll give us a 4.49 or a 4.52, and then we could just slap the Cooper Kupp label on him, right? But or the Wes Welker or the Julian Edelman, right? And those lazy comps for reasons that we know right? So I want to go back to the film, DP, to be able to check it out and say, you know what? Like I'm throwing out certain misnomers, right? And I'm going with who I see. And then the 2 running backs, DP, Trey Benson and Jalen Wright, my biggest takeaway is that I think Trey Benson running that 40 time, he placed himself in the conversation for teams to think that he can be a RB1. And the reason why that 40 time was important for him was because there was a question mark of why wasn't he getting enough touches, right?
Facts.
And I think now with him running that 40 time, I don't think teams are going to care that much, right? They're going to say, you know what, that was just something between Florida State and Florida State, right? But this guy's a high profile athlete to where the film is really good and he can test really well. And I think Jalen Wright just burst on the scene as a guy that in a platoon system, right? If you have that big thumper, you throw him in there, you got your lightning and thunder, right? And he can be a really valuable part. So those are my biggest takeaways.
I love those takeaways, Keith, because like you said, man, like especially with the running backs, the way they tested, like this was such a much maligned running back class. People just, oh man, there's no Gibbs, there's no Bijan. Guys, there's not many Gibbs and Bijans in
That's why
any
we should
running
have
back
valued
class.
them last year.
You know what I mean? It's just not normal that we see two elite caliber running backs in the same class that go top 15, especially when y'all tell us that they don't matter. You know what I mean? You love Saquon at Penn State. You hate him with the Giants. Let's pay Daniel Jones. I'm not going to go on no rant about that right now. But the point is, that's where we have come with running backs. So I think that this is a better group than people want to give credit to. And I hope that these guys get the draft capital and work themselves into getting the draft capital from teams where they can get the opportunities to perform. Because I think both of these guys that you named, Jalen Wright, you talked about Blake Corum earlier, right? He was the best guy on the field drills, which is like, that's not surprising. You know what I mean? Like the fluidity, the feel, the jump cuts, the everything. It just looked great, man. So between the quarterbacks, the running backs, these receivers, it was a great showing from these guys. But listen, that's our takeaways, man. Like you got, listen, go get a quarterback. If you need him, be aggressive. Move up in the top of the second. Move up into the first. Go get your guy. Because once you get past Spencer Rattler and Bo Nix, man, it's slim pickings. And I don't want you to be in the position where you're saying, man, maybe Michael Pratt can save our franchise. Because I don't think you want to do that.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That wraps up another episode of the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, man. I want to say shout out to every day. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day. I said it at the top of the show. I'm going to say it at the back of the show, man. Go ahead, hit that like button. Go ahead and comment. If you're not subscribed to the channel, go ahead and subscribe to the YouTube channel and tell somebody that, hey, this is the best NFL draft content out there, man. So we thank you for listening to us each and every single day. Listen, man, I am Keith Sanchez. You can find me on X at The Talent Code. My co-host, man, Damian Parson, man. You can find him on X at DP_NFL. And like we always like to say, man, y'all tweet at us. Y'all talk to us because we like to talk back.
Listen, guys, as always, we appreciate y'all. Thank y'all for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Sorry for being our everydayers, man. Go subscribe and follow for free on YouTube. Wherever you listen to podcasts, get the latest episode as soon as it is available. We may be able to talk about some of the offensive linemen and where these guys land after their performances on the field. Troy Fautanu, right? Is he a guard? Is he a tackle? Man, he's just a really good football player, right? Joe Alt, did he solidify himself? You know what I mean? Amarius Mims, Olu Fashanu, Tyler Guy. It's so how many offensive tackles go in round one? We're gonna talk about all this stuff tomorrow on the Locked On Podcast Network. Come and join the conversation again tomorrow on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.